Alrighty, what's going on, folks? We're going to be doing another reaction video to a Steam Deck review, and one that I found rather interesting given the name is my Steam Deck review, a console gamer's perspective. I have been very much in the realm that the Steam Deck is more console than PC. It tends to be a console that happens to do some particularly PC type stuff if you want it to. So I'm curious to see what this particular console person's perspective tends to be. So let's roll into it and see what he's got to say, shall we?
So I've got my hands on something this weekend that I've been wanting to test out for a while. The Steam Deck by Valve. This thing came out earlier this year, but it's hard to get your hands on one as there's a waiting list. Well, I was lucky enough to find one to borrow, and I wanted to provide my opinion on it, coming from a console gamer. See, I've never really been into PC games. I don't own a PC, I'm a Mac user, which as most gamers know, isn't exactly the gaming console of choice.
You are right. It is the Mac is a PC. I'm not in the crowd that it's not. I will say it's not the preferred gaming platform, given some of the more esoteric choices Apple decides to make as it relates to how it perceives gaming, which is kind of very old school. It's, Macs are for work, basically. The old adage is PCs were for work and Macs were the fun things. Well, the Macs are for work and PCs are the fun thing now. Ironic. Those I'm a Mac and I'm a PC things haven't aged very well.
Most big titles of PC games aren't available on the Mac, but I do like to play games on consoles. I'm not a hardcore gamer by any means, but I have a couple of consoles, being the PS5 and the Nintendo Switch. I play games like Destiny, Call of Duty, Rocket League, NHL, and so on. I also play a lot of games with my son, like any of the Mario games or Minecraft. Why do people like gaming consoles? It's because of the fun and simplicity. Gaming consoles have many advantages as opposed to gaming on a computer. One of the main ones is the ease of use. It's easier for a child or someone who is not very technologically oriented to understand how to play games on a console than it is for them to figure out how to play on a computer.
Generically, he's right. I'm not. That's always been the preferred way for an understanding of consoles. I will say that since most consoles, except for the Switch in this particular case, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X, all went to more x86 based. They have gotten a lot more annoying. I did a kind of a hot take on how I viewed consoles. Oh, ease of use, and then you pop a disc, like especially if you have a disc-based game, and you get a 20 gig update on the first playthrough, or in like the Xbox Series X case, where you basically have to download every damn thing. And so simplicity is relative, because the pop something in and just play it is not really a mentality anymore. Pop it in and have a 20 gig, 30 gig update is more the mentality now. So that instant gratification of gaming is kind of gone, unfortunately. And that doesn't really that pertains to all platforms at this point. And that this mentality is kind of gone by the wayside, unfortunately. The interface and how you interact with it and the overall use of it is really, the user experience is different. So I will agree with that.
Take the Nintendo Switch, for example, which I instantly want to compare to the Steam Deck because, well, they kind of look similar. The Switch allows you to play games from game cards or digital downloads from the Nintendo online store. Every game is compatible with your console. You don't have to worry about whether you have the right processor, GPU, software, or firmware to make it the best playing experience. That makes it super approachable for kids, parents, and everyone.
One thing I will say is it's not a perfect experience when you play some of those emulated older titles. Doesn't matter if it's PlayStation, Xbox, or in this case you mentioned the Switch. It's not a perfect one-to-one, so it doesn't play quite as well unless some work has gone into it from the game devs in some way, shape, or form.
everyone in between. Enter the Steam Deck by Valve. This is one of the first ever PCs in the form of a handheld gaming console. This is the first time Valve is entering into hardware development. The Steam
So, yes and no. It is one of the first. You are correct. There was the Razer or something that they kind of a concept thing that they came up with a while ago. Alienware came out with another concept that was kind of like a PC version of the Switch with like detachable controllers and all the jazz. There's also companies like GPD and INEO that have, obviously been making this form factor for a bit. So yes and no. This is not Valve's first foray into hardware. They have, they had the HTC Vive, which yes, HTC was the one making it, but that was with a lot of Valve input. Then there's obviously the Valve Index. There's the Steam controller. There was the Steam Link. Steam machines weren't really Valve hardware per se, just given the fact that they relied on third parties as opposed to Valve being the one producing the actual hardware. So yes and no on that particular concept. This is their first foray into this type of hardware. I will give you that, though.
Steam Deck may look like a Nintendo Switch at first glance, but the similarities end pretty quickly. Valve has built their own Linux-based OS called SteamOS, which powers this thing. Because it's a PC, you can also install Windows if you want to play an even wider array of games from other sources than the Steam store.
So do note that you can install Windows. He is correct. It is an x86 based machine around an AMD processor and AMD GPU. However, do note that it's not really supported by Valve. They'll provide the drivers and stuff, but like actual support, it's not there, and it's not a great experience. Ironic, because people always talk about, oh, well, Linux isn't a great user experience. Well, when something's specifically designed with it in mind, it's not a bad experience after all. And Windows is the subpar experience. Things like the audio drivers don't work, and there's some other weird esoteric stuff that doesn't work. Again, I don't have Windows on mine. I have my Steam Deck sitting right over here. I don't have Windows on it. And again, I don't run Windows at all right now. I'm strictly a Linux user at this point in my life. It's just the thing that works the best for me. I sold my last Windows machine just because I have spent so little time in it, probably in the last year and a half. Like it was 98% of the time I was in some type of Linux distro. And for the 2% I was booted into Windows, it was just for some weird esoteric games updates and some other stuff. But other than that, it just wasn't worth it for me. So, but yes, you can install Windows on it, though. Again, do keep in mind it's not officially supported, but you can do it.
Nintendo Switch, the deck can be plugged into a TV, but like a computer, it can be plugged into a monitor and used with a mouse and keyboard. There's an available dock, which makes that process even easier. In many ways, this seems like a really versatile machine, geared for gaming, and in a sense, it makes PC gaming a bit more approachable. But is it right for someone who's coming from
The whole point of the Steam Deck is a consoleized version of PC gaming. And like you pointed out, is to make it more approachable, because really the games that are deck verified, quote unquote, they still have some work on that end to do. The whole point is these work great on this particular hardware, and that has always been one of the strengths of console gaming, is that games developed around specific hardware for specific hardware work really well. You can look at games like the original Last of Us for the PS3, which pushed it to its limits. You can look at games that are developed specifically for the Nintendo Switch that they work great. One of my favorite games that works fantastic on the Switch is Astral Chain. So when software is developed specifically for the hardware and all the nuances of the hardware, you can have a fantastic piece of software and developed experience around it. So in that case, that's where the Steam Deck shines.
In a sense, it makes PC gaming a bit more approachable. But is it right for someone who's coming from the world of console gaming, or for the parents who want to buy their kids a game console? Let's dig in. Comparing the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck isn't that fair, and it's not super useful, but it's good for context. The Nintendo Switch is kind of older hardware at this point.
I do like the fact that he brings up the fact that the Switch is older hardware at this point. So props to that.
Since it's been around for several years. Plus, it was never intended to compete with high-level gaming PCs. The Nintendo Switch runs on an NVIDIA Tegra X1 system on a chip running at 1.02 GHz, with a total of 4 GB of RAM. It's got an NVIDIA Maxwell-based GPU, which clocks at up to 768 MHz, and its storage is either 32 GB or 64 GB with the option to expand with a micro SD card up to 2 TB. The Steam Deck uses a custom AMD accelerated processing unit, which runs between 2.4 and 3.5 GHz with a total of 16 GB of RAM. Its GPU runs between 1 to 1.6 GHz, and the deck can be ordered with 64, 256, or 512 GB of storage, and it also has a micro SD card slot for storage expansion. Basically, the Steam Deck is better in almost every technical way, except for the screen, which you could argue is better on the Switch if you prefer OLED displays. The Switch display is 1280 by 720 versus the Steam Deck at 1280 by 800. The main difference is the OLED technology, and the Switch allows for blacker blacks and richer contrast overall. Both displays are 7-inch diagonal and both are touchscreen. Then there's the size of the units themselves. The Switch OLED model is 4 by 9.5 by 0.5 inches, whereas the Steam Deck is significantly larger at 4 by 10.5 by 2 inches. Volumetrically, the Steam Deck is more than double the size of the Nintendo Switch. And the price is not close either. The Switch runs for between $380 and $450 depending on if you get the standard model or the OLED model. And the Steam Deck has 3 different models ranging from $500 to $820. As I mentioned before, Valve has created their own
information, the 520 to 820, I'm assuming there's some type of conversion rate there, because I'm just speaking from the States. It starts at 400 here, so I'm not going to slag on the inaccuracies for pricing, because we could be dealing with somebody who's from, probably, I'm guessing, Canada or some other country that has a dollar-ish conversion rate. So, well, I'm not going to slag on that too much. Generically, it's, I believe, $399, $529, and $650, if I remember correctly, for the exact models as they go up in storage.
Custom operating system here. The experience is pretty easy from the get-go. Simply sign in with your Steam account, which is free to join. Many PC players will already have a Steam account, and they'll find that all of their games from their Steam library are available to download. Here's where the super easy experience diverges a little bit. See, you can't play all of your Steam games that you might play on a PC. Well, I think technically you are able to download them and run them, but not all of them will work right. That's because this is a new form factor for a PC.
So you are correct. You are actually able to download all of them, although download is relative. I know I have some games in my Steam library that are depoted with certain Linux things that it'll download the Linux stuff and it don't work on Linux at all. Black Arts 2 is one of them. There's another one that I have a demo for a code, which was, I believe, Blacktail, and it downloads like a 16-bit, literally, or 16 bytes of data, and that's it. But that's across Windows and Linux, so that's not a specific, that's just specific to that. But yes, you can download all these, and you are correct. They do not all play because the experience is different. This is where that very first page you're on right here, the Great on Deck stuff, actually does come into play.
PC, and it's running its own custom OS. So some games aren't technically compatible. For example, some games don't have controller support, which is kind of important considering what you're playing on. The game needs to have support for the compatibility layer Steam uses to play these Windows.
So the controller support, when you go into the particular game, there's usually down by just underneath, there's the gear icon, and then there's the controller icon. Click on the controller icon and it'll take you to the community layouts, which is a really fantastic thing that you can thank most of the people who bought Steam controllers to actually do, because that's what a lot of the support comes from. Also PS4 and all other controller profiles generically will remap to the Steam Deck controllers pretty well. So most games that say they don't have controller support, most people have done the work to actually make controller support plausible, at least.
Those games on Linux as well. Some games have a greater degree of support than others. Not to worry too much though, because Valve has now tested and verified 5,000 plus games, and of course there's still plenty of
So do note, verified and tested are very, very different. Verified is ones that are great on deck for an experience. They just work, as it were, the console game dreamer's approach, or playable. Playable tend to be the ones that have some type of one issue, a small text, requires the on-screen keyboard, have to use the mouse and trackpad stuff. Take your pick. There's usually like one reason it's only playable on the deck as opposed to verified on the deck or great on deck. So there is a difference between the two, and it's a very important difference because your experience from a user perspective will be far different.
Popular games that are confirmed to be unsupported at this time: Destiny 2, Fall Guys, and PUBG, to name a few. This is because of the anti-cheat software these games employ. It doesn't work on the custom Steam OS. This might change in the future, but for now you should definitely check to see if your favorite games are deck verified.
So do know, as far as Destiny 2, you can blame Bungie on that one, because they've said basically if you try running it, short version is don't try it, you'll get banned, is the really short version. It's a little more nuanced than that, but the short version is it's not going to work. And you're right about PUBG, same deal. And it is a lot of the EAC stuff. Fall Guys it'll work sometimes, and then it won't, and then it'll work, then it won't. That's surprisingly an Epic issue. I would say I'm shocked by that, but I'm not.
The games that are verified definitely work well though. And the experience from browsing the store to downloading and installing is all seamless. There's a handy verified badge on all compatible games, and just like on a console, you can buy and download the game right there. During my time with the deck, I was able to download and play several games, including Rocket League, A Hat in Time, Tricky Towers, and I also tried Desk Job, Steam's short tech demo game, which is fun and quirky, but also gives you a sense of all that the Steam Deck can do, including the motion controls. For the most part, the games I played were buttery smooth, and I didn't require any tweaking or optimization or playing with the settings. That lends credence to the idea that the Steam Deck can feel more like a console. It's going for that plug and play feeling, and it works pretty well as long as you stick to the verified games. The device, although bigger and heavier than the Switch, is still comfortable to game with for hours. The one difference is it does have a built-in fan, and it will get kind of warm.
And by default, with the default controllers and everything else, and the actual default form factor, because I want to make this specific without having to get into like the third-party Joy-Cons, I'll give you more ergonomics. The Steam Deck by default, and the design of it, is far more ergonomical than the Switch with the default Joy-Cons. That's just reality. When you look at everybody who's reviewed anything as it relates to the Switch, even when they prefer portable mode, will tell you the same thing. The default Joy-Cons, ergonomically, generically, are pretty trash. So long gaming sessions are kind of garbage. The Steam Deck, I will give 100% credit. The ergonomics, like in the grips that he's using right there, far better ergonomics for the form factor.
if you're putting it through its paces. Randomly, I found myself hitting the back buttons, which are R4, R5, L4, L5, by accident when I was playing certain games. I didn't actually play a game in which I needed those buttons, but they were mapped in some cases to actions I could do with other buttons. For example, I kept toggling the ball cam on and off accidentally while playing Rocket League, which caused a few problems, not to mention being mildly annoying. But I get that some gamers want as many customizable buttons as possible. So I think that we've established that this.
So as far as the back triggers, the ones underneath the grip, those, I will tell you right now, as the more I play racing games and stuff, that's really where those tend to shine the most, because you can kind of remap how you say you want to shift gears and stuff, because you can use those, because that's where your fingers will naturally rest. So it's just easier to use them as opposed to the top triggers or whatever. So I will agree that you will find yourself accidentally occasionally hitting the back trigger guards on the Steam Deck. So that's not an invalid point.
The Steam Deck is pretty cool. I have to give Valve a lot of credit here for thinking creatively and coming up with a brand new form factor. For one thing, you're getting a pretty decent gaming PC in a cool form factor for a pretty decent price. I mean, $500 to $800, while expensive, is relatively affordable when compared to modern gaming PCs. This brings
So he's not wrong, especially even currently when you look at modern gaming PCs, the pricing is just absurd still. I know I paid over $1,000 for a 3050 Ti system. So yeah, pricing is relative, obviously, but the idea that you still have to pay. I mean, if you're looking at like a 3070, you're talking probably $1,400 to $1,500, or you can get something that'll theoretically give you a better, more condensed experience. I'd go for the more condensed experience because the main drive for this is the game. So, I mean, I can't really slag on that too much given the pricing.
Brings PC gaming to a budget level without sacrificing too much on performance. But there is still a sacrifice. PC gamers will find that while the hardware is decent for the price, the graphics performance is roughly in line with mid-range GPUs that were shipping about 5 years ago. So this isn't anything groundbreaking. If you want 4K resolution, ray tracing, and consistently high frame rates, the Steam Deck won't deliver. But in the world of portable gaming, the Steam Deck is way more portable than even a gaming laptop. You can slip this into a small backpack or even a purse. You don't need a big laptop bag.
So note to the guy in the last video that I reacted to about the Steam Deck and how it takes up 1/3 of my bag. It's so heavy. Bruh, apparently this should fit into your little man purse.
And a bunch of peripherals. But on the other hand, because of the limited compatibility, you get access to a smaller game library than if you did have a laptop. Lastly, both good and bad in my opinion, you can use this as a computer. Not only can you dock it and hook it up to a monitor, but even on its own, there's a desktop mode you can access. There's a web browser, which is Firefox, to serve a lot of your regular computing needs. But you can also install Windows if you want to run all kinds of Windows apps. This is super cool and it's great for those who want to tinker and install different things and generally play with the infinite customizability of having an actual PC. But there's a risk that you might make things a bit too complicated for the user who just wants a seamless, always works kind of experience.
So that seamless all just works experience that you're talking about, that's why you stick to the playable or deck verified stuff. As far as getting into the PC deck as a PC mentality, you're not wrong. It's awesome to have, and that's why generically it's kind of buried in like the power options. So like you literally have to go to power and then you'll see switch to desktop, whereas opposed to just making it some random thing that they made easily accessible to everyone to figure out. So like you're not wrong, but you're also not right.
So here's the bottom line. This falls somewhere in between a gaming console and a computer. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite do either of those things as well as its counterparts. It's not going to be the top end PC or have the breadth of available titles. It's also not going to provide the pure plug and play experience of a gaming console. I think Valve is working really hard on this problem with its deck verified program, but there's still going to be headaches here and there for users who want that seamless experience. What this means is that if you're in the market for a game console, you should get a game console. And this doesn't quite meet those standards, in my opinion. If you're in the market for a gaming PC, you should get a gaming PC. And again, this doesn't quite hit the mark. But none of that really matters because this is actually best for the person who already has a gaming PC. Yes, this is basically just meant to be a second portable gaming solution for PC owners, especially if their favorite games are deck verified, because they can pick up where they left off from playing on their computer and move on over to the Steam Deck and vice versa. Or perhaps they will play different types of games on their gaming PC than on their Steam Deck. Really, the point is that they have access to their Steam library in multiple places. They have a great portable system and they don't mind potentially dealing with the tinkering and optimizing that sometimes comes with a PC. And I gotta tell you, Steam Deck really delivers on that value. As a pretty casual console gamer, it's not for me, but I am very impressed with it. What do you think? Do you have a Steam Deck or do you have one reserved?
So that's really the end of the video. I'm not going to play out the last like 20 seconds, 30 seconds of this. My take from somebody who owns consoles as well, we tend to gloss over a console experience quite frequently. You do tinker quite a bit on console, despite what people will tell you. Go into your PS5 settings, your PS4 settings. Go and play with your Xbox Series, insert, version here settings to get some of the stuff to work. Trying to get a console activated sometimes with like the Xbox Series with a stupid app. Like there's more tinkering on console than people actually want to admit to. So it's not as plug and play on console. Plug and play is relative. I can plug this into a dock. I have the one of the JSOC docks for the Steam Deck. And I can pop this on the dock, plug it in, boot it up, and it boots right up to the monitor that I have it attached to. So and that goes right into the deck UI. So it's kind of relative because it depends on how you view consoles. Again, we tend to over the things that we're used to. We tend to kind of mitigate and undersell some of its problems. It's like when Windows users complain about Linux being complicated, and it's like, oh, it's complicated, but they will go and regedit stuff and do all this other dumb stuff to get Windows to work. Rollback, how much random nonsense in Windows have Windows users put up with. And until recently, I was also one that you just accept it as, well, it's Windows. That's just the way it works. Getting certain games to work, getting like Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3 to work, giant headaches. Other games, was it not Drakengard? Drakensong, I believe Drakensong is based on the Dark Eye universe. River of Time and those kind of games. Those are a pain to get to work. Certain games like Time Shift doesn't work. Like, so insert thing here, we just tend to ignore those problems because, oh, it's just how it works. There's things with the Steam Deck that are not great. I'm looking at you battery life specifically, but that's the trade-off. Higher graphics, more demand, eats through the battery, whatever. I determine that experience. So as a console gamer, I can respect the opinion that it's meant for people who are already have PCs. I understand that. And you're not wrong, because that is a lot of the selling point is, oh, I have access to, insert amount of games that are either verified or playable here. And that's cool. I do like that. But one thing that you tend not to mention is you can go to sites like Fanatical and constantly buy bundles. Go to Humble Bundle and get bundles. You can get games from like Humble Choice and all the other stuff on a regular basis for, $13 a month, if I remember correctly, for a Humble Bundle. and they're dumb cheap. Whereas consoles, generically, their sales are still relatively expensive for their digital stuff. So I can spend $4 and get 12 games that I might play 4 of. So that means I spent $4. Whereas on console, I might buy 4 games and that's going to cost me $20 and I might play 2. So it's relative. You can build a bigger library quicker on Steam or a console than you can on console, honestly. And I'm a console gamer. I mean, behind all the PS4 stuff up there's a whole bottom row of PS3 stuff. So again, it's relative. So I'm not going to slag on it. I do appreciate hearing different perspectives. But again, I think sometimes we tend to mitigate and undersell the experience on console as it is now. So that's just my take. What do you guys think? Is the deck a console that just doesn't quite do it right, or is it a PC that doesn't quite do it right, or is it a console that happens to do some PC shit, which is my take on it? So let me know down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys on the flip.